So there's a passage that in Ephesians 2:10, it says that you and I, that we're made for good works. And good works are generally like morally sound and redemptive, but they also require overcoming problems and challenges. Um, and so redemptive work requires that you find a way around challenges to overcome these things, to be innovative in those ways, to find new ways. um, and yeah, you're called to have a redemptive impact by finding a way through these problems, through challenges that will come to you. You can't have them not come. You can just choose what to do with them, either be beaten by them or to overcome them. Which is why, in order to do redemptive work, we at the center of our core value, and it's called problem solving. And the way that we say that is find a way. So there's a design thinking methodology that I want to share with you, which is to problem solving what the scientific method is to scientific discovery. So it has 5 stages, and I want to walk you through them. If you want to do a really good job, capable job, this is like best practice around how to address and solve problems. And I'll caution you to evaluate and consider each of these stages with merit on their own, because I've seen students lean towards jumping to the end, but taking your time on the beginning will give you a significantly better product. So let me show you what I'm talking about here. Okay. So design thinking has 5 different categories. The first one is empathy, or research, I should say. This is where you consider the people who are having the problem now, who are going through the challenge now, and you want to understand everything about how they think and see and feel that experience. When this is skipped, people come up with solutions that don't work for the people that are actually having the problem. So they solve a different problem. You need to do this. You need to understand what's going on in the situation. You need to understand how they feel about it, what their actual pain is, in order to solve it. And then from there, the job is to define the problem. And this can be done a lot of different ways. So generally in this task, what we want to do is, after having done this portion and iteratively with this portion, you want to say, how many different ways can I define the problem? Because if you can define the problem differently than other people, you'll come up with solutions that they can't come up with. So it's a really significant stage, is to define the problem. You want to do this, again, in as many different ways as you can. This is to diverge. You want to go broad. So go wide, go as far as you can to get there. And then from there, you can take a definition or two and begin going through a cycle wherein you ideate solutions. So now that you have a definition, you want to come up with a lot of different ideas to try to solve that problem. And if you have multiple definitions, you can come up with multiple sets of different solutions. When you evaluate those, you can then consider and say, okay, now I'm going to prototype these. So I'm going to make a minimum viable product version of this, of one of these, and test it, which is the 5th one. So rapid prototyping, make a prototype of one of your solutions quickly, cheaply, efficiently, and then test it. And then take the feedback and come back around and consider this again, right? You want to recycle the process. And then eventually you'll come up with a test that, when it comes back to the people that have tried it, they say, yes, this has solved our problem. This is the design thinking framework, and it's critical to come up with solutions to real-world problems. All right? So if you're trying to hit a problem and you're trying to find a way around it, design thinking is the way that we approach that in the Center for Innovation. I want to tell you about a group that we had last year called the Cornerstone Engineering and Design Team. They walked through design thinking the whole way. So first they met with the Aqua team. They went on site. They met with them on a video call. And fortunately, we had a lot of people from all over the company go to it. So there were some executives that were there, there's some managers that were there, and there were also like the field technicians that were at the site trying to show us how the problem worked out. What we figured out was that they each had different versions of the problem. Right? The executives were thinking that the human cost is too high. Right? The managers were thinking, this is terrible for me to, I can't spread my resources across the board well enough, and my teams are unhappy. And the technicians were like, this doesn't work. If I push this button, then that doesn't function. And so their definitions of the problem were different. And so the team had to get together and empathize and understand and research and figure out what each stakeholder group had, and then they combined those into different definitions of the problem. And then from there, they ideated different solutions. All the teams broke up, and they all sketched out quick ideas and versions of what it might look like. And they found 3 different versions that they wanted to prototype, and so they tested those out, built those quickly, and then tried them out in the real world. And they kept going until their team was happy about it. So they lived through this design thinking framework to build a solution to a problem. And so they were able to come up with a solution that Aqua themselves hadn't done yet, because they went through this whole process together through it. So if you want to have a redemptive impact in the world, it's going to require that you do this. that you solve problems this way. Not this way necessarily, but that you solve problems, that you overcome them. So when you get hit with a challenge, and you think, I can't do this, or this is too big for me, or I'm not equipped for this. We will say to you, and your friends will say to you, and you should say to yourself, find a way. Just figure it out. Work through it, overcome it, find a solution. If you want, you can use the design thinking framework to get you there. And we have some great examples of biblical characters who have done this. Ruth and David and Joseph, where they were put in really difficult situations, and they were morally upright in most of the cases, and they found a way to overcome those things. And so, I mean, every problem that we have is somebody else's pain, and each one of those situations is an opportunity to innovate for redemptive impact. And so it's my hope then that for the rest of this year, and Lord willing, for the rest of your lives, that when you get hit with a challenge, that you don't quit, but that you find a way.